Here is a specialized Allez Sport that one of my customers has brought in for me to tune up and do the refurbishing magic tune-up. I'll go over the details after this. Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin the Guy. Obviously, I have a garage shop. Taking scary out of used bikes one bike at a time.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin the Guy on this whole bike series. We are looking at the specialized Allez Sport that a customer brought in for me to do in a tune-up. I sold him a bike previously, and he realized I did tune-ups as well, and I did such a good job on the bike that he purchased. He wants me to do the same magic that I do to all other bikes that I do refurbish to resale. So we're just going to dive into this, and first we're going to do a review of the bike itself. It's a specialized Allez Sport. Allez is a model line in Specialized where they have Sport, Comp, Pro, Team, you got a whole laundry list of different models in that, and that even compares to even today. This is actually early 2000s. I can tell by that by the componentry mix of the 105 and Tiger 9-speed, which is still really decent stuff. You know, it's a good recreational bike. He's going to be doing it for recreational riding. He thought he'd have one with like platform pedals, another one with clipless, so one's a little more for serious riding, one's for recreational riding. So, you know, a lot of people would get to that level when they get into cycling that, you know, they'll find themselves like, oh, I need a bike to do this now, and then do that instead of just the old classic road bike, mountain bike. And it's like recreational, cruising, going to your local restaurants or riding with the kids, that kind of thing. They fit those needs. And you know, looking at this bike, it's really good condition. Just doing a run over as of the frame, but there's a couple little nuances to this one. Is like, as being a service rider perspective, you know, the chain is stretched to a point that it should be replaced, so it has the best optimum shifting. So it's at least a little over 0.5 on the chain checker here. And in addition to, the cables and housing look kind of worn. It has a lot of garage dust, so once I cut through a lot of that, and he opted to do the new bar tape because, you know, dirty old bar tape is just weird. It's like wearing other people's socks, that kind of thing. They allow as a sweat point. And when he does come in to pick it up, I will fit him to it, make sure a good static fit, get him adjusted to this particular bike and ready to go with clipless. So yeah, we're just going to dive into this and, you know, look at the different things it's going to need. So chain and, you know, bar tape is definitely something I'm going to dive into, of switching out with the chain. The cassette, we will definitely test that after we get a new chain on there and put a heavy load on each of the gears. It's a 9-speed to make sure, you know, if it's going to pop or jump, then that means we need to do a different cassette. You can typically get 2 cassettes to 1 chain as a side note on that, so that's something to think about as well. Set these aside. Take the chain or cassette off. We're using a chain whip. This also has that plastic cover. Usually when it gets to this age, I remove them because they become brittle. Need some leverage. So loosen that up. There we go. And it becomes more, instead of a safety feature preventing that chain going over into the spokes, if your derailleur is adjusted correctly, you're not going to have that problem. And obviously I'll adjust that. And this is a 9-speed. Basically, you got 8 gears in a cluster that's pinned together. Then you have 1 cog. And this is lower end. The more expensive you get, the more they fall apart. They have more pieced. And this guy seems to be kind of flimsy, so we will dispose of that for safety reasons. And checking the hub, seems to be pretty good. I will inspect the rim and by truing it and seeing and also cleaning it as well. But first glance, it doesn't look like this bike has had any or hardly any kind of use on it, but you never know. Take out the mystery, right? So we're going to take out the front wheel. I also do clean the skewers and the ultrasonic cleaner. Get out getting a grit and refresh it with lube for the pivot, so it's a little bit easier for the customer or the person who's going to be using this bike to be able to utilize that quick release without any binding. So the front hub has a little bit of maybe just needs to be adjusted. Doesn't seem notchy, but it seems a little tight. And the rim wells on these too, you can kind of still see the machining. of them, so they haven't been worn down from the brake pads. That's kind of a good indication that the wheels have not been used that much, which means the bike hasn't been used hardly at all, that kind of thing. So I will go ahead and clip these cables. The back one was starting to fray. The front one still was intact, but this way we will get this bike into its best peak performance by replacing all these cables in the housing. And on older housing, even though it may not have been used, they do dry out like the casing does. And sometimes on the gray and the colored housing, for some reason, the UV light breaks it down, so you'll have that blowout. If you've ever seen that, it's kind of crazy. And that will prevent your shifting. Well, you won't be able to shift at all. Also on these, I did play with the shifting a little bit, and there's a lot of hesitation on both front and rear. Well, what happens on these shifters, even though they haven't been used very much, the original OEM grease that was put in there from Shimano is hardened up over time. So it clogs up those cogs so they don't ratchet like they're supposed to. When you put it in an ultrasonic cleaner with the temperature, it reminds me I better turn this on, turn on the heat. Well, with a warmer temperature with the ultrasonic cleaning, it will actually break down that old grease. And I do kind of pre-treat it with a pretty concentrated degreaser. You can use a carb or brake cleaner, or I suggest using Finish Line as a bicycle, or not Finish Line, sorry, White Lightning Clean Streak, which is another version of that. It is not as strong, but it does the same thing as breaking down grease and so forth. And take these cables out like so. And once you put those shifters in there, that really kind of blows out all that old gunk. And then you could I like to refresh it with Tri-Flow, which is this stuff here. This is the foaming version. There's also a spray and also a drip. So I have all three for various reasons. The drip is on the pivot points. The foam I sometimes put in the shifters because it kind of saturates and kind of gets into all those working pieces, that kind of thing. So that really brings those shifters back to life. Yeah, it's one of those things that back in the day we would just put it in a chemical tank and clean it, and there wasn't a heating element to those, and we would not be able to get the old grease out, and we would assume that the shifters were toast. And I kind of wonder how many shifters I personally have said, they're gone, when they could have been fixed by this tool here, the ultrasonic cleaner. Unfortunately, these didn't come out till way later, so sorry of all those in the 90s that lost shifters because of a misconception there. But no, they did, some of them did wear out. You can actually kind of see when you actually broke those apart to clean those out. Like the old Dior thumb shifters, the ratchet ones would definitely, it was like a softer material, and they would definitely break down. And yeah, you actually can see it. But in those days, it's not too terribly expensive. But fast forward today, a lot of bike shops, a lot of them are conditioned to just replace with new. And when you're looking at 9-speed, there's not that many, or especially if you go to 8-speed, then you're looking at lower end stuff like Claris or Sora. But if you're very savvy and know what to look for, pardon the interruption, there is more. More, you say? Push the more button. Push it. Push it. I dare you to push it. Once you push that button, you get more details about the video you are watching, in addition to all the tools that I use in the shop, as well as suggestion for improving your ride. In addition to help me provide advocacy in the cycling community, also links to other social media accounts as well as my website to find the products I actually sell and other insights in the industry. Other videos linked below. Extend your cycling experience here on YouTube. And now back to your original programming. So if it does turn out that you have a bad set of shifters or a rear derailleur in this vintage and you want to keep that higher quality, you can go on eBay and Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist to go look for refurbished parts. There's shops similar to mine that they have a lot of extra parts or frames or whatever, and then those parts get cleaned and put onto a market. And that's where I bought a few just to, get brakes to match or any of that nature. And you can take that time to find and match that derailleur or the shifter, and then you can take it to your shop and like, can you install these for me? And part of that tune-up process, and they'll maybe charge you a little extra labor, but at least that gets you the parts. Or if you get an estimate, it's like, hold on, write down the number on the part number, and let me go research it, and I'll bring in the part for you to, if I can get it, to finish the repair, that kind of thing. But because they're going to try to pigeonhole you to just buy the new, because that's where they, for them, that's all they know. So it's not really a bad thing, but that's just their processes. They're not going to go onto eBay and look for shifters for you. That's highly unlikely. But you can do it yourself, and that will kind of, save you a little bit, and also get you parts that match that particular vintage. And there is probably some shops out there that are going to be snub their nose to that kind of thing, which is unfortunate. But I believe that's going to change here quite drastically, because after COVID, we're now experiencing a huge downward trend of sales of all kinds, from bikes to parts to service to everything. So those owners are going to put a lot more pressure of like, just get it done. Like, let's take care of the customer. If they want find shifters, we'll find shifters. If they, or they bring in their stuff, we'll just charge them labor. They'll be happy to have any kind of service come in the door for them. I would hope, and definitely just take it a warm grab. And a lot of service people, they work on their own stuff, so they kind of get that perspective. Back in the 90s, I just remember we would get so miffed of people buying chains or whatever, or parts from Performance, because it'd be a lot cheaper. But it's like one of those things you just get grumpy about. And fast forward today, thinking about it, and I do apologize for any kind of grumpiness from that, because honestly, at the end of the day, yeah, we should have been a little more in tune to like, okay, yeah, we can't match that price. Go ahead and get that. But we're not, are we willing to lose out on a $10 profit on a chain to lose the actual transaction of the tune-up? Just charge the labor for it. That kind of thing. Just, be a little more positive about it, and develop that customer, that conversation or that rapport, build up that customer base where, maybe this time they found something cheaper, whatever, but next time they come around, maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, you gave me a solid last time, I'll go ahead and buy that chain. I know it's more expensive, but I like you guys and I want to support your business, so I'm willing to pay a little extra more money. Not everybody thinks that at all, but it does occur and does resonate with some people. Just to say, but anywho, you rather have that service coming in the door than no service at all. I've seen some comments on some of my postings where there's a shop that doesn't do any service from Canyon. They're doing the hard line and sand. They don't want to do any Canyon repairs, and that's, if they have enough volume, that, kudos for them. They want to hold their line, but for the rest of us, it's kind of like, regardless. If you're trying to combat the direct-to-consumer, that's a losing war. COVID did that to us. That was like the nail in the coffin, right? We were busy as hell and all of that, and it was great, and we're selling stuff, but it also conditioned a whole bunch of people to go online and buy stuff. Come on, it's just the cruel reality of it. And when you have companies like Specialized follow suit to those things, yeah, you're just going to be in that scenario. So anywho, and the brakes on this actually look really good. The brake pads have a little wear, I would say, but not really too bad. The lines are still there. So compared to the front, it's pretty close. So might be able to not have to add brake pads to the list of things that need to be replaced. So that's a good thing. The front derailleur, that's a Tagra, and I did come across a few Tagra derailleurs that were, I would say they were bad because they got multiple ones. of that vintage, but this is a little bit different design, and this one still seems to be working. The other one was like super floppy, like the spring tab holder, the alloy piece broke. And looking at the rear derailleur, all we have is some buildup Teflon from the lube that they were using, and the jockey pulleys are still intact. I will pull those pulleys apart to clean them. That's kind of like my latest thing, is the ultrasonic cleaner doesn't get inside all of these little bits. It cleans really well on the inside casing, but pulling these off real quick really does kind of help get those jockey pulleys clean and free from contaminants. And also the cleaning the inside of this cage bit. So basically I'm taking a 3mm, is that right? Yeah, 3mm. And I do pay attention because these are directional, and also upper and lower pulleys. So do one at a time, inspect and pull it apart, and memorize which one goes where if you're doing it yourself. You can see that just slides right out. And then I take, you can take a little hook or safety, a pin, and you kind of just, this one has not a bearing, but it has a sliding bushing. That's where the rolls on there. So you want to get that all cleaned up and clean out the casing. So that's one guy. And then I do the upper. The upper is the one that's on the top, and the lower is down here. The Allen bolt is a different direction. The bolts are usually the same length, so if those get switched out, that's not big of a deal. But that internal part, the internal part, that's the cage. You can kind of see the dirtiness on the inside of that, right? That one actually stuck to the, and this one has a little washer on the inside, so I got to keep mental note on that. That's on the outside of the drive side, and the outside plates look the same. This one actually has this particular, these slide out, this little cylinder thing inside here. And now you want to get that all cleaned out too. So I'm looking like, okay, that's a metal contact to this bushing here. And this one slides out too, but this is not, this is just a nylon with this bushing here. And these bushings actually look like the same, so if they get mixed up, that's okay. But make sure that this little guy, you don't lose track of that guy. So when I do ultrasonic cleaning with small parts, I have a strainer like this to help keep everything together. The plastic bits sometimes float. These usually don't because they're a little more dense, but like if you had cable guides that you put in there, they'll kind of float around, but for the most part, they'll stay in place, and I kind of wedge that in there. That way, I can get this all cleaned up and put back together. That's a rotation point. The cranks, if I can't get the chain rings cleaned off really well, then I pull the chain rings apart too. Since this guy's going to be using these clipless pedals, I'm going to be popping these off to clean them. And to take pedals off, it's pedal forward. And it's good to have a big wrench. It's a 15mm to leverage these against themselves. Sometimes these buggers get really on there tight, and since you're pedaling forwards on both, one is the opposite thread. That's a way to good remember. And I take these. It's okay to put these in ultrasonic cleaner like once or twice, but I don't put them in there very many times because you don't want to contaminate the internal seals of the bearing in there, but at least clean the springs and so forth. That seal will hold up long enough for at least 5 minutes of a cycle. That I have noticed anyway. So I'm gonna take, these don't have extracting bolts, it's just a lock bolt. And looking at the size of this, is going to be the square tapered versus the splined version. Those weren't on very tight, so that's something that you want to make sure. I mean, those should have been a lot tighter than that to pop loose, honestly. That means when this was built from when it was brand new, since it hasn't hardly been used, that is something that wasn't double checked or tightened during assembly. And I want to double check, make sure this tool goes all the way down into the crank, so I have the best opportunity of getting this crank arm off by this extractor. And you can see on the inside here, it just pushes that pin out like so. Okay, so I'm got a good little pile of parts here to clean, and so far looking pretty good. And we'll get to the point where it's just the bare frame, and then we'll clean the frame. Then I'll do a parts review after that. But let me get this crank arm off. It's had the push pin too far in. And you want to be careful because the tool is hardened steel and the crank arms are alloy. So you don't want to cross thread these. You want to make sure they're snug, but not overly tighten, and definitely don't want to cross thread it, because if you cross thread it and damage this, then that enables you to be able to pull the cranks off, and then all of a sudden you have to use a special tool or cut it off. So you want to make sure that's good. Pop. And this gives me an opportunity to check that bottom bracket. I feel it feels very smooth. I was not expecting anything less, considering the condition of this bike is turned out to be new-like underneath all this dust and grease. So there we go. And these bars have some puffiness to them. That means there's probably an insert underneath. These are the kind of the Zertz Roubaix style bars that has this little rubber insert in here. That helps the vibration, to cut down fatigue. Oh, that's some tight. Oh boy. So some of this older tape. This is going to be a booger to come off. Yeah. See, it's kind of peeling on itself. So the only trick I've found to get some of the stuff off that likes to adhese here is give it a good tug. That kind of helps breaks that connection. So hopefully it doesn't tear. So you're giving a good pull. So it's pushing that adhesive to the side and kind of loosening it up before you pull it up. Not every time, but that sometimes helps from this happening, like this extra sticky stuff. Then it's a whole bunch of scraping and chemicals, and so you want to try to get this old bar tape off as much as possible. You know, some people use heat guns. There's all sorts of anger, frustration ways to remove really bad bar tape, that kind of thing. If you're using a bar tape that you know that sticks really bad, but you like the bar tape, I've seen one mechanic wrap the whole bars with electrical tape underneath. So when you went to remove it, all you had to do is remove the electrical tape, and that kept a clear, clean connection. Oop. And that worked really well. Sticky, sticky, sticky stuff. All right. There we go. Sticking on itself. Get back to that. Because this bar tape, you know, you pull that adhesive strap. And this also has this gel. And that gel adds a lot more comfort to the ride too. A lot of people, some people do the inexpensive way of doing that is by just leaving your old tape on there and bar tape on top of it, which kind of is weird. I mean, it kind of works. Poking me there, but it kind of doesn't. See, I'm having a harder time on the bottom here, so it's really becoming a nuisance. And you kind of see that bar tape not wanting to come off very easily. So my pull technique is failing in this part of the bar. Then you just have to take a razor blade and scrape that. It's just super gunky stuff. You can see at least it's not doing it on the gel pack. And these are kind of squishy and they are a liquid inside, so you want to be careful not to cut them. Whew. Almost there. I'll just show you on this one side, but it is definitely, whoa. See, I'm still putting a lot of tension on this to kind of debond. And it sometimes really hears these handlebars. Like so. Boop. Let's see if I can get this bar unplugged to come out. Actually, not too terrible. I've had a lot worse, and most of them are a lot better. Pretty a rarity, but it does happen. The tape that I use doesn't have as much stickiness to it, and it's a little bit easier. And I'll have to cut the rest of this off. Then I can use like a pretty good solvent to kind of rub off the rest of this. But yeah, this is the nuisance of wrap bars sometimes. Not all of them, just on a few here. And take that brake cable out like so. Take this brake cable out. Just to show you how to unwrap, then I'll proceed on the other side, but I want to take these shifters off. And I don't have to unwrap them to get the shifters off, because I can just take it off and complete the band clamp and leave the band clamp there, which I'm going to anyway, because I don't want to take these off, because these have adhesive to them. There's gel pads, so just want to go ahead and pop these off so I can clean these in the ultrasonic cleaner like so. Then I do give a little squirt inside and also inside the shifting, and be careful. Use eye protection, gloves, and all this when you're using this kind of thing. Cycle it through. And it already is feeling better, so I take a piece of old strip of housing to kind of pry this open to make it a little bit easier for that ultrasonic cleaner to get inside and do its magic. And I usually only do the shifters for about 5 minutes. 5 minutes on the brake calipers, and the crank, cassette, and chains. Sometimes they'll go through a couple cycles, but everything else is like a one cycle deal, because I don't want it to get too crazy and start taking off paint or decals or anything of that nature. And after 5 minutes, usually, if it doesn't get clean after that, it's not going to get any cleaner after just adding time. So, but the chain and cassettes, you can add more time, and it does help with that. And open this guy up. So there's the parts, and those will go in the ultrasonic cleaner to cook. And in the meantime, while those are cooking, that's what's so nice about this, is I can proceed on to other parts of the bike. I'm not turning it on because it will definitely infringe on the sound. So, but I want to inspect this frame. So by doing so, I use Purple Power, which is 50-50 with water in a bottle. And make sure you're spraying in a rag and use gloves. And I'm going through each tube and kind of getting all this gunk off. And inspecting the welds and making sure there's no any major dings. And proceed on the other side. Double check the dropout, make sure there's nothing contaminated there. You can see my glove already came apart. So I'll switch that out before using any of those chemicals over there. All right, let's take a peek. On the other side. Give it a good little look here. It doesn't look like it had very many scuffages from garage wear. So however it was stored, must have been like either hanging or somewhere in a safe place. Man, this is going to be, wow. I'm not seeing any kind of scratches or anything like that. Oh, a little bit here. That's pretty common because it sticks out. That should clean up a little bit. And the scaries, which is underneath. It's where car racks will bite the frame, is underneath here. Road rash. Oh, there's a little bit of a scarring here under the decal, but just clear coat. Check for the serial number. It's still intact. Chain stays look good underneath, and the seat stays look good underneath. Nothing's bent, just a couple scuffs. There we go. All right. Let's dive into cleaning the parts, and we'll do a review of the parts, and after that we'll do a final review of the bike. But so far, we're looking at just chain, cables, housing. Cost on that, just for parts, is probably, I would say, $50 to $100 lift, depending on the quality of parts that you want to put on there. And the tune-up on this particular kind of tune-up will, mine's the little more, that has the frame detailing, so that's more expensive. But if you went to your local shop, probably a tune-up on this guy, $150 to $200 tune-up will probably get you where you need to be. So having in $300 into a bike like this will blow the doors off of any brand new aluminum bike for $1,500, or even used aluminum bike for $1,500. So anywho, let's clean these parts up and go over what we find from there. So here we have it. The parts cleaned up pretty good. Those shifters are amazingly crisp. Derailleur's cleaned up. The chain rings, it took a lot of scrubbing to get that black chain goo off of there, but it's done. New chain going to be put on, bar tape as well. And these wheels, they're pretty much like new. Smooth hubs and everything. And with Adam's polishes that I used and my techniques, bam, this frame turned out to be pretty immaculate. A couple little scuffs here that you can't really get out because it doesn't have a clear coat. It's kind of like a matte finish, and the paint is pretty thin, so had to just work with what we had, but it actually turned out really well. Let's recap. Well, there you have it. This bike is going to be beautifully tuned up. I don't see anything that sticks out that's going to be a big red flag. The wheels are great. The frame is perfectly fine. A couple little scuffs there, but not even noticeable really. Other than the chain and new cables and housing and bar tape, it's going to ride like new. And for being like this condition of being like new, this will blow the doors off any new bike at $1,500 for sure, especially the price. I mean, I don't know what the cost on this was for the individual, because he's got it and he brought it to me to have tuned up. But the actual tune-up is going to run, probably around $200 with all of this. So all tuned up and ready to go. That includes the fitting through my services, and that'll make it even more of a better experience for riding. So let me finish up and check out these pictures, and on to the next bike. Thank you for hanging out with me in the garage. Check out these awesome pictures.